You gotta want them upside the head. 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 You gotta want them upside the head.
You gotta turn them loose like Stalin said. Arrest the wounded and bury the dead. Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
You gotta want them upside the head. You gotta want them upside the head.
The SEC's tough, so they said. 12 came calling, the whole dozen did. Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
You ready, roll Tide? You ready, roll Tide? You ready, roll Tide?
You gotta want them upside the head. You gotta want them upside the head.
The 13th tried, the 13th died. Now the nation knows the meaning of the words roll tide. Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
The 1992 football season has ended, and Bama is back. Perhaps Associated Press voters paid attention to Coach Gene Stallings when he said Alabama was probably a year away from contending seriously for a national championship. They knew the Crimson Tide defense was awesome, but they wondered about an offense led by a sophomore quarterback. Meanwhile, few people from the Deep South doubted Alabama would contend for the Southeastern Conference Championship. Skeptics were sparse by the time the undefeated Crimson Tide landed in the inaugural SEC championship game. Alabama delivered that afternoon with a dramatic victory over Florida. In the process, the Crimson Tide wrapped up its 20th SEC championship, 9 more than any other member. Also, it was the 22nd consecutive win for Alabama, the second longest streak in the history of the proud program, and it set up a monumental showdown with Miami in the Sugar Bowl. Miami was ranked number 1. The Hurricanes had claimed 2 national championships in 4 seasons and had won 29 consecutive games. Alabama was ranked number 2. The Crimson Tide was a decisive underdog. Never had 2 teams with such impressive winning streaks clashed during a bowl game. It was another Bowl-Bama Bowl event, with Alabama extending its national record for postseason appearances to 45. The crowd was rapturous. Tickets sold for as much as $350. It was a suitable conclusion to the championship season and the 100th year of Alabama football. The fact that tradition-rich Crimson Tide secured its 12th national championship in New Orleans made it a more fitting culmination to a remarkable campaign that recreated victorious echoes from the past. Alabama did not come out smoking in its season opener, a 25-8 victory over Vanderbilt in Tuscaloosa. The offense was tentative, the defense was erratic. Ultimately, turnovers proved pivotal, with the Crimson Tide defense stopping the Commodores when things became more tense than expected. There were 3 fumble recoveries and 3 pass interceptions. John Copeland, Antonio London, and Derek Oden were stars. All 3 had at least 11 tackles. Quarterback Jay Barker completed 14 of 27 passes for 185 yards. He was pushing his perfect record as a starter to 5-0. Kevin Lee caught 3 passes for 78 yards. Alabama was playing without David Palmer, who was indefinitely suspended by coach Gene Stallings. The game at Bryant-Denny Stadium was watched by 70,123 fans. Many were shaking their heads afterwards, wondering what might happen to an Alabama team that was seriously challenged and at times manhandled by inspired Vanderbilt. For instance, the Commodores gained 138 yards rushing against a defense that would end the regular season giving up an average of less than 2 yards per attempt. Obviously, voters were not overly concerned, perhaps because the Crimson Tide looked like a team that could find a way to win on the toughest of days. If fans were concerned after the opening game, the second game did little to ease anxiety. Alabama had to rely on a fake punt for a touchdown to subdue the stubborn Golden Eagles. The pass from Brian Deal to Tommy Johnson covered 63 yards. It helped light up the scoreboard on an afternoon when the Crimson Tide offense misfired. A bright spot on an otherwise gray afternoon was the running of Chris Anderson. He had 67 yards on 15 carries and scored the other touchdown. Jay Barker completed 13 of 21 passes against Southern Miss for 127 yards. But the critics were on him after the performance, with most thinking the Alabama offense could not succeed with him as the on-the-field leader. Things were hotter in the news media for his position coach, Mal Moore. Meanwhile, the Crimson Tide defense, led by Eric Curry and Lemansky Hall, indicated it could carry the team until the offense worked out its kinks. Still, 83,091 fans left Legion Field after a 17-10 victory, knowing Alabama would either have to put up or shut up in its next game. The mood in Tuscaloosa remained uncomfortable during the week prior to a visit to Little Rock for a game against Arkansas. The team was having trouble taking its good work on the practice field into battle. Coach Gene Stallings knew it was an important week for his Crimson Tide, a pivotal point in the season. His players were not having much fun, and impartial observers were thinking Alabama was overrated. Then came a performance that served as a catalyst, a 38-11 victory in front of 55,912 fans, including soon-to-be President Bill Clinton. Alabama was awesome against the Razorbacks. Jay Barker missed on only 3 of 17 passes and finished with 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chris Anderson caught 4, Curtis Brown and Martin Houston caught 3. The running game came to life as Derek Lassick rushed 18 times for 112 yards. Suddenly, the Crimson Tide was showing some offense to go with its highly talented defense. Arkansas surrendered 3 fumble recoveries and 3 pass interceptions to a defensive unit that was rounding into impressive form after a shaky start against Vanderbilt. Lemansky Hall had 7 tackles, and Sam Shade had 2 pass interceptions in Little Rock. Their efforts helped Alabama end the week ranked 1st in the nation in total defense and 4th in the nation in scoring defense. When they exited War Memorial Stadium, fans had reason to believe the Crimson Tide might be turning the corner and moving toward a higher plane. Fans unfamiliar with Louisiana Tech must have shaken their heads in disbelief upon hearing Alabama defeated the Bulldogs 13-0. But in reality, the Crimson Tide survived against a good team, particularly on one side of the line of scrimmage. Louisiana Tech ended the season ranked 4th in the nation in total defense and 10th in the nation in scoring defense. In fact, Alabama played 8 of the top 40 defensive teams in the nation during the 1992 regular season, then tangled with another from the top 5 in the Sugar Bowl. The victory was secured because the Louisiana Tech offense was overmatched. Alabama held the Bulldogs to -8 yards rushing. Michael Rogers, John Copeland, Antonio London, and Lemansky Hall were the stars for the Crimson Tide. But the player who excited the fans most was David Palmer, who got out of the doghouse and quickly ran into the end zone. Meanwhile, the Alabama offense was dormant, which left 77,622 fans frustrated and wondering. So were voters in the Associated Press poll. Homecoming was happy in Tuscaloosa for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was a resounding victory over South Carolina. The program honored its team of the century, with quarterback Kenny Stabler serving as Grand Marshal for the homecoming parade. Alabama claimed a 48-7 victory at Bryant-Denny Stadium to the delight of 70,123 fans. And of much importance that weekend, national championship contenders ranked in front of the Crimson Tide began to resemble pretenders, clearing the way for Alabama to make an upward move in the Associated Press poll. The Crimson Tide cranked up its running game against the hapless Gamecocks, with both Chris Anderson and Derek Lassick rushing for more than 100 yards. The former scored 2 touchdowns, the latter scored 1. Sherman Williams had 48 yards rushing. David Palmer had 42. Curtis Brown caught 3 passes for 46 yards and a touchdown. Coach Gene Stallings substituted freely against South Carolina, satisfying fans and in the process developing depth for the second half of the regular season. When Alabama fans went to the Louisiana Superdome to watch the Crimson Tide face Tulane, they had to be thinking how nice it would be to make a return to New Orleans on January 1st for the Sugar Bowl. Obviously, players were thinking the same thing. Alabama gathered 4 pass interceptions while whipping the Green Wave 37-0. Antonio Langham claimed his 4th of the season, a definite sign of things to come. Again, Coach Gene Stallings had the chance to play a lot of people, which kept individual statistics from glowing. However, Derek Lassick rushed for 188 yards on 20 carries, and Chris Anderson had 84 on 7. Reserve cornerback Brian Bergdorf got into the act. He passed 51 yards to Tarrant Lynch as Alabama produced numerous big plays with an offense that had been more grinded out in nature. The Big Red was on a roll as the Crimson Tide proved too much for the Green Wave. At the midway point of the regular season, Alabama ranked first in the nation in total defense, rushing defense, and scoring defense, and second in pass defense. Another type ranking was improving as well. The day after 50,240 fans watched the Crimson Tide take care of Tulane, voters in the Associated Press poll jumped Alabama 2 spots and put it in position to go for a national championship. Since 1928, the 3rd Saturday in October has been festive and important to the football fortunes of rivals Alabama and Tennessee. That was the case again in 1992 when the Crimson Tide went to Knoxville and won 17-10. It was the 7th consecutive win for Alabama over the Big Orange, and the Crimson Tide played as a team while recording it. However, there were standouts. Defensively, Michael Rogers, George Teague, John Copeland, Eric Curry, Derek Oden, and Sam Shade left their marks on Tennessee. Offensively, Derek Lassick rushed for 148 yards on 33 carries. He scored 2 touchdowns. Martin Houston rushed 9 times for 57 yards. David Palmer rushed 2 times for 34 yards and caught 3 passes for 42 yards. Place kicker Michael Proctor continued to contribute big during a debut season that eventually saw him make 20 field goals. The consecutive winning streak for Alabama overall reached 17 in front of 97,388 fans and a national television audience. It was at that moment that national observers had to know the Crimson Tide was good enough to make it to New Orleans unscathed. Jay Barker had a point to prove and did so magnificently as Alabama defeated Ole Miss in front of 70,123 fans at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. The quarterback nobody seemed willing to praise before the game completed 25 of 39 passes for 285 yards. Meanwhile, Kevin Lee and David Palmer had dream games. The former caught 8 passes for 82 yards. The latter caught 7 for 67 yards as the Crimson Tide won 31-10. Those were the offensive stars as Alabama stared at the Rebels' stacked defense and did what it had to do to remain undefeated. The offensive output came at an ideal time, with television cameras sending the action to many voters in the Associated Press poll. Also, the offense was more unpredictable than in previous games. Defensively, Alabama got 9 tackles from Derek Oden on a relatively subpar afternoon. Ole Miss, a quality opponent, had 109 yards rushing and 102 yards passing. The Crimson Tide was weary after going through 8 games without a break, so an upcoming week off was welcomed. It brought good news in the national championship chase because Alabama moved up a notch without playing. Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge is becoming an Alabama home field of sorts. The Crimson Tide has not lost there since 1969, an incredible feat considering the hostile surroundings. So it was not surprising when Alabama defeated LSU 31-11 on national television to move up to number 2 behind Miami in the Associated Press poll. The Crimson Tide tossed a 1-2-3 punch at the Bengal Tigers, with Chris Anderson, Sherman Williams, and Derek Lassick rushing for 149, 69, and 54 yards respectively. They accounted for 4 touchdowns. Jay Barker passed just enough to keep LSU guessing. He completed 4 to Prince Wimbley. To declare a defensive standout is difficult because of the way the unit performed as one. But Michael Rogers had 11 tackles and George Teague had 2 pass interceptions. Other than that, 76,813 fans will attest it was business as usual, which means crunch, 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 and crunch some more.
Number 1, coming to get you, baby. All the way, baby. Going all the way. All the way.
ESPN got the game it was looking for when Alabama went to Starkville to play an inspired Mississippi State squad in front of a frenzied crowd. The Crimson Tide exploded early, looking as if it would romp past the Bulldogs. Alabama players and fans were ecstatic. Then came a dreadful third quarter for the Crimson Tide, which fell behind and had to dig deep for championship savvy. Even Coach Gene Stallings was a bit worried. But with its national championship aspirations hanging in balance, Alabama went to work and escaped with a 30-21 victory in front of 41,320 fans at Scott Field. Kevin Lee caught 4 passes for 81 yards to pace the offense. Prince Wimbley caught 3 for 58. Jay Barker completed 13 of 27 for 198 yards against a swarming Mississippi State defense. George Teague made it 2 consecutive games with 2 pass interceptions, and Lemansky Hall had 15 tackles to pace a defense that had its hands full. Sam Shade had 10 tackles, Tommy Johnson had 9, and Derek Oden and Michael Rogers had 8. With the victory over Mississippi State in hand, Alabama took another week off to prepare for intrastate rival Auburn. No doubt, the dream match with Miami was taking shape.
Come on, man, let's go!
Coach Gene Stallings had a lot of reasons to be concerned before Alabama played Auburn at Legion Field in Birmingham. The game was played on Thanksgiving Day, which changed the routine a bit. Auburn was ending a dismal season with a final chance to salvage something from it. Pat Dye had resigned the evening before as the Tigers' coach, and that produced confusion and emotion. All of this showed in the first half, which left ABC with not much to present to a national audience, a scoreless contest. But Antonio Langham changed that with one play, a dramatic pass interception for a touchdown that seemed to put the Crimson Tide in gear. It was as if the air came out of Auburn at that moment. The Tigers managed only 20 yards rushing on 28 attempts against the powerful Alabama defense. John Copeland, Eric Curry, Sam Shade, and Chris Donnelly were the leaders on the tackle chart. At the end, Alabama had a whip hand, with Martin Houston plowing through Auburn. He had 68 yards on 14 carries. Derek Lassick and Sherman Williams had 43 and 42 yards respectively. The Crimson Tide had to pass only 13 times, with Curtis Brown catching 2 for 41 yards. After the game, Pat Dye told Gene Stallings that He thought Alabama had the best team in the nation. In reality, the Crimson Tide still had to prove it had the best team in the SEC. Sugar Bowl ticket orders were placed, and motel rooms in New Orleans were reserved before Alabama went into the inaugural Southeastern Conference Championship game against Florida. Still, there was apprehension among Crimson Tide fans who realized the last time their team had been defeated, it was by the Gators during the 1991 regular season. Emotions were at a high pitch at Legion Field, with 83,091 fans in attendance, and ABC Sports knew it had a showcase program to send across the nation. Led by Coach Steve Spurrier, Florida was the Eastern Division champion and the underdog. But the Gators had Shane Matthews at quarterback, which made them dangerous against any opponent. While Alabama fans were talking about the terrific defense and the possibility of a shutout, more astute observers knew Florida would have an offensive plan that would produce points. The question was whether the Crimson Tide could put enough points on the scoreboard to keep the game from becoming a nail-biter. For a while, it looked as if Alabama would be on easy street. The Crimson Tide moved the football, both running and passing, and the lead became comfortable. Derek Lassick was off and running. He ended the game with 121 yards rushing on 21 attempts. He scored 2 touchdowns. But other Crimson Tide runners found the going tough against the inspired, young, and improved Gators. Jay Barker was passing well. He completed 10 of 18 attempts for 154 yards and 1 touchdown. The top receiver was David Palmer, who caught 5 for 101 yards. But there were times when Florida made it tough on the quarterback. Meanwhile, the Gators came up with one of the shortest passes in history to create problems for Alabama. The play worked time and again as Florida stayed in contention. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, ABC Sports had a better game than Crimson Tide fans preferred. The score was 21-21, and the Gators had the football as regulation time neared an end. Then came a familiar hero for Alabama, Antonio Langham. He stepped in front of a pass receiver, intercepted a Shane Matthews pass, and ran into the end zone. The score was 28-21, and the championship season was history, at least from an SEC standpoint. The Alabama defense, tested but never defeated, had done it again. The leaders on the tackle chart were Chris Donnelly, Derek Oden, Will Brown, Antonio Langham, John Copeland, Jeremy Nunley, Sam Shade, George Teague, and Tommy Johnson. Familiar names that will remain prominent in Crimson Tide lore. The Crimson Tide defense was amazing during the regular season. It allowed only 55 yards per game on the ground. There were 52 quarterback sacks, 12 by John Copeland and 11 by Eric Curry. It allowed only 139 yards per game through the air. There were 22 pass interceptions, 6 by both Antonio Langham and George Teague. The leader on the tackle chart was Lemansky Hall. He had 70. If ever opponents had nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, it was against the Crimson Tide in 1992. The SEC Championship Trophy was not the only hardware the Alabama football team took to Tuscaloosa in early December. Coach Gene Stallings was named National Coach of the Year by numerous organizations. Among his awards was the Paul Bear Bryant Award, which was perfect for one of his former players. 8 Crimson Tide defensive players made the All-SEC team. Eric Curry, John Copeland, and Antonio Langham were honored as All-America performers. The former finished in the top 10 in Heisman Trophy balloting. Also, he was National Player of the Year and was a finalist for the Lombardi Award. Then there was the good news and bad news related to Michael Rogers, the second leading tackler on the team. The linebacker was selected to the sophomore All-America team and was expected to be a vital figure for Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. But on Christmas Eve, he was involved in a traffic accident and was knocked unconscious. Obviously, he was lost for the game against powerful Miami. That moved Mario Morris into a starting position. Alabama arrived in New Orleans on December 26th and began final preparations for a national championship game against the Hurricanes. It became apparent the Crimson Tide was not interested in listening to talk about being an 8-point underdog.
I'm going to tell you what Alabama's thinking right now. You know, they're real upset because they really hate to see a true regulator come to New Orleans like this, you know what I'm saying? So believe that. Peace out, baby. You coming through it.
The Hurricanes were talented, yes, as Alabama players admitted. But the Crimson Tide and its coach knew it could win in the Louisiana Superdome.
There's been a World War I, World War II. Now it's going to be World War III. It's going to be the big Super Bowl game. And it's going to be, you know, it's a big war in there. I'm looking forward to it.
Everybody kind of had doubts about what this team could do, especially offensively. And I guess we're taking it as a challenge going down to Miami, and we like being the underdogs. I heard Derek Lassick say on the news one night, and that's the way. I guess that's just kind of the temper of this team. They just kind of want to go in there and really have to just fight and scrap and you know, try to beat Miami.
I think all the pressure's on Miami. They're the big favorites. We're the underdogs. You know, they're the Clubber Lanes, and we're the Rocket. You know, Sylvester Stallone. So we just. Hopefully we can go the distance and come out with a win.
I'm very appreciative of what all the players have been able to accomplish this year. And you talk about going into our conference and winning, you know, 9 Southeastern Conference games. Your football team is used to being in some big games.
As New Orleans braced for one of the more important college games in history, Miami players talked a good game. Meanwhile, Alabama players prepared diligently for what they knew would be a national championship showdown similar to a Muhammad Ali heavyweight boxing match staged in a carnival-like setting.
It's going to be a thriller. They want to go to heaven, we're going to take them in 4 or 7. You know, it's going to be a thrill. It's going to be a good game, and so stay tuned.
Really, I want to give thanks out to the seniors, you know, because we work hard for, you know, the captains, you know, they have been great leaders, you know, Cool P, Derek and Teague and George Wilson. They've, you know, done a good job, and I respect them for that. And for this university and Coast Islands, it's been a fulfilling, unexpected dream for us, you know. It's been something that, you know, we've worked hard for, and now it's time to show the world and to show the nation that we are the #1 team in the nation.
As great a feeling as it would be for me personally, I want it more for the players and our staff. I mean, these guys have come a long way. I'm sort of on the twilight of my career. I realize I've had a good year, and these guys are just getting started, and I think it would help them tremendously.
But, you know, they can't be beat. You know, we've had our winning streaks, and they've had their winning streaks, and so it's a time that we're gonna, you know, bring those 50 winning streaks together and see who is #1, and that's what we're gonna go out there and prove to the nation.
Once it was face-to-face with Miami, Alabama began proving its point early and kept hammering it home until 76,789 fans and a national television audience were convinced. When the defense stopped Miami and Heisman Trophy-winning quarterback Gino Torretta on its first possession, Crimson Tide fans had reason to believe The dream would come true. Then, David Palmer added to the hope with a 37-yard punt return to the Hurricanes' 24-yard line. It took Alabama 6 plays to score, with Michael Proctor kicking a 19-yard field goal for a 3-0 lead with 10:56 remaining in the first quarter. But the most encouraging sign on the short drive was the running of Derek Lassick. He looked determined, and the offensive line appeared capable of knocking Miami defenders off the line of scrimmage. As expected, the Hurricanes bounced back. They went 47 yards in 9 plays for a Dane Pruitt field goal. The Alabama native made it from 49 yards with room to spare. With 7:49 remaining in the first quarter, the game was tied, and the Sugar Bowl had the match it anticipated. Late in the first quarter, it became obvious the Miami offense was confused by the Alabama defense. Crimson Tide coaches had a masterful plan, basically using a 3-man pass rush and a crowded defensive secondary. Alabama players were up to the challenges created by the alignment. The Alabama offense settled itself after some anxious moments in the first quarter. The result was a 46-yard, 10-play scoring drive capped by another Michael Proctor field goal. Derek Lassick had a 24-yard run during the scoring drive. The freshman place kicker made the field goal attempt from 23 yards after an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty stalled what appeared to be a march toward a touchdown. With 10:48 remaining in the second quarter, Alabama led 6-3. A tad more than 2 minutes later, the Crimson Tide was back in business thanks to a Sam Shade pass interception. He returned the football 34 yards to the Miami 31-yard line. Simply stated, Alabama fans were in an uproar. They cheered louder when Derek Lassick ran 25 yards to the Hurricanes' 3-yard line. The Crimson Tide scored the first touchdown of the game when Sherman Williams ran 2 yards to cap a 5-play drive. The point after touchdown by Michael Proctor increased the lead to 13-3 with 6:09 remaining until halftime. Miami was stunned by the Alabama show of brute strength. Quarterback Gino Torretta was harassed. The Hurricanes could not run the football, evidenced by the 6 yards they gained on the ground in the first half. But Miami managed a scoring drive just before halftime, moving 59 yards in 10 plays. In fact, there was no time on the scoreboard clock when Dane Pruitt kicked a 42-yard field goal to ease the humiliation being felt by the Hurricanes. When the inspired players gave way to the marching bands, Alabama was feeling spry and confident. Crimson Tide fans felt likewise. The third quarter will be remembered as one in which the Hurricanes were struck by lightning bolts that hit 16 seconds apart. The first lightning flash came when determined Derek Lassick hammered his way into the Miami end zone from 1 yard out. The senior en route to most valuable player honors would not be denied. Nor would Michael Proctor, who kicked another point after touchdown to give Alabama a stunning 20-6 lead. The touchdown was set up by Tommy Johnson, who intercepted a Gino Torretta pass and threatened to score himself. He ran the football 23 yards to the Miami 20-yard line. The second lightning flash came on the first play by Miami after the Crimson Tide touchdown. This time, George Teague intercepted a pass and ran the football 31 yards into the end zone. When Michael Proctor kicked the point after touchdown, a decided underdog had a 27-6 lead with 9:56 remaining in the third quarter. Once again, the Alabama defense was doing its thing. The scoreboard clock was moving slowly for Alabama fans during the fourth quarter. They were ready to get the romp completed. The second slowed more so with 12:08 remaining in the game when Kevin Williams gathered in a punt and returned the football 78 yards for a Miami touchdown. It was a splendid individual effort. The point after touchdown by Dane Pruitt cut the Alabama lead to 27-13 with a lot of time left. But the Crimson Tide was not to be denied. It answered the Hurricanes' only touchdown of the game with an impressive scoring drive that covered 59 yards on 12 plays. More importantly, it took more than 5 minutes off the scoreboard clock. It was during the march that Coach Gene Stallings showed how much confidence he had in his players. When Alabama faced a fourth down at the 50-yard line, he said, "Go for it." Tarrant Lynch had a big run during the scoring drive, going 16 yards to the Miami 4-yard line. Again, Derek Lassick scored the touchdown. He ran 4 yards. When Michael Proctor kicked the point after touchdown, there was no doubt who the winner would be in a Sugar Bowl showdown. In the process, the Crimson Tide became the most decided underdog to win in the 59-year history of the New Orleans Classic. The fact Alabama defenders had enough pride to keep Miami out of the end zone in the final seconds explains why the Crimson Tide was able to rise to the top of the college football world in this, the championship season.
Catch it with a right to the jaw, kind of surprised you. That's what happened to Miami. They were walking around, pushing on each other, and we really surprised them. They were surprised. Coach Stallings is a lot like Coach Bryant. He, from the old school, he believes in pounding them for 60 minutes. And I think it opened up a lot of teams' eyes, and they'll see that, hey, maybe we need to switch from the air attack to the run attack because it really wears out on the defense. Towards the end of the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter, you can really see that they were tired and beat up, from the pounding that we were putting on them through the running game.
When you got guys like Derek Lassick and Sherman Williams and Chris Anderson, you can have a big day running football, and especially with our offensive line. I mean, without Toby and George and Matt and Roosevelt and all them guys and John, there wouldn't be any holes for them guys to run through. And because of them, we're national champions.
Greatest feeling in the world. Can't describe it. We got 100 years worth of football here. Tradition still lives.
got a woman upside the head. You 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 got a woman upside the head.
You gotta turn them loose, like Stalin said. Arrest the wounded and bury the dead. Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
You got a woman upside the head. You got a woman upside the head.
The SEC's tough, so they said. 12 came calling, the whole dozen did. With Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
You ready, roll Tide? You ready, roll Tide? You ready, roll Tide?
You got a woman upside the head. You got a woman upside the head.
The 13th tried, the 13th died. Now the nation knows the meaning of the words roll tide. Bama's on a mission, rivals on the run. Roll Tide, roll toward number one.
Our hearts will forever be warmed by memories of the Crimson Tide. Those players from so long ago, and coaches on victory rides.
Oh, our minds will forever be filled with glorious thoughts of games won, and pretty as roses and sweet as sugar, indoors or under the sun. We painted a nation with crimson as we screamed, roll tide, roll. We built tradition by winning, yes indeed, bold Bama bold. Thank you coaches, thank you players, thank you all for warming our souls. Yes indeed, roll tide, roll into the future, bold Bama bold. Yes indeed.